Yeah, Nimisha, thank you. You can continue.
Hello everyone, welcome to a talk on cryptography and cryptanalysis. Cryptography is the science of secrets. Cryptography derives its name from Greek word called cryptos and graphen, which mean hidden words. Cryptography is the practice and study of hiding information. It is the art or science of converting a plain intelligible data into an unintelligible data and again retransforming that message into its original form. Sensitive data exposure occurs when application does not adequately protect sensitive information. The data can vary and be anything from usernames, passwords, session tokens, credit card details to private healthcare data and more can be exposed. In 2018 alone, over 2.6 billion records were stolen or exposed in more than 1,100 data breaches around the world. So, how cryptography is used to provide us the elements of security? The first being confidentiality, which means protecting the information from disclosure to unauthorized parties. Integrity, which is protecting the information from being modified by unauthorized parties. Authentication, which means establishing the identity and assuring that the two parties are who they claim to be. Access control is a security technique that regulates how or what can view or use resources in a computing environment. Non repudiation, a mechanism to prove that the sender really sent this message. Highly sensitive and confidential information that gives thieves the key of your identity becomes exposed in hacks and leaks. So, what is the root cause of this problem? Data stored in plain text. So if the attackers are able to access data, then plain text will be easily available to them. So preventive measures that we need to take are data should not be stored in clear text or as well transmitted in clear text via the network. We apply cryptography to convert the plain text original message to the scrambled word, which is the ciphertext. So here, Bob wants to transfer the message to Alice, and he wants the plain text hello to go. So what happens is that he uses the encoder, which does the encryption and produces the ciphertext, which is passed over the communication channel. At the end of the receiver, the Alice decrypts the message using decryption algorithms to get back hello, which is the plain text. So now let's see how this is implemented. Cryptography is broadly categorized into two different categories: symmetric key cryptography and asymmetric key cryptography, which out of which symmetric key cryptography is again divided into two forms, which is classical and modern. Classical is subdivided into transposition and substitution. In substitution cipher, we substitute another character, whereas in transposition cipher, we use plain text characters only, but we change their positions or shuffle the positions. In asymmetric key cryptography, there are two ways, which are RSA or DSA. Now let's see the difference between symmetric and asymmetric key encryption. In symmetric key encryption, there is only one key called private, which is used by both sender and receiver. But in case of asymmetric key encryption, two keys are used. One is public and one is private. Sender uses public key and the receiver uses private key. Since there is only one key in symmetric one, so it must be done over a secure channel. Whereas asymmetric key encryption, the key exchange is possible over the public channel also. This method is faster and this is slower. So, for symmetric key encryption, smaller key is needed for same level of security as asymmetric. Examples are AES, 3DES, Serpent, whereas the examples for asymmetric key encryption are RSA, DSA, TCC. Monoalphabetic substitution cipher. It basically consists of substituting every plain text character for different ciphertext character. Keys for monoalphabetic substitution cipher usually consist of 26 letters. So, for encryption, what we do is that A is replaced with K, B is replaced with C, and at the time of decryption, C will be replaced with B and K will be replaced with A. The total possible combinations for using this method are 4.03 into 10 raised to 26, since A can be replaced with B, C, D, and so on till Z. The next method is Caesar cipher, which is a type of substitution cipher in which each plain text is shifted a certain number of places down the alphabet. As you can see in this example, the key used is 19. That means on adding 19 to the A, we get the value of the alphabet T. So A shifted by 19 places will produce T. For B, U will be produced, and similarly for Z, S. If you have to go back or decrypt it, we just replace T with A. That is, we subtract 19 from the value of T. We shift it by 19 to get back A in backward direction. For U, we will get B. Using this method, there are only 25 different codes available. The next is Vigenère cipher, which is a polyalphabetic substitution cipher which uses Vigenère table for encryption and decryption. Suppose that we have to encrypt the message attack at dawn. So now we choose a keyword. Here in this case, we have chosen lemon. So we have to repeat the word lemon as many number of times as there are alphabets in our plain text. So now we will write it as lemon, lemon, and LE. So after this, we will write plain text on one line, key on the other line. So now how to encrypt it? For this, we use this Vigenère table, which has rows and columns. Columns correspond to the plain text and the rows correspond to the key. So we will search the plain text in columns and the key in rows. So we will search A in the column and L in the rows and get the corresponding alphabet. So A, searching in the column in row L, we get alphabet L. So AL will be encrypted as L. For TE, we search T in the column and go down to the row to get an X. After that, T and M. So T, we go down to M to get an F. In this way, this encryption algorithm works. Let's see using a calculator as well. So let's try attack at dawn and enter key as lemon. So we get this same code as we had seen here. Also, there's one more thing to observe, that even if we have two T's, but in the ciphertext, they do not produce the same ciphertext for both T's. So this makes it a little difficult to decrypt, sorry. So the next is transposition cipher. Ciphertext constitutes permutation of plain text. Ciphertext will have all the characters from the plain text, but the position of characters will change. There is no concept of key here. So, according to this example which is placed here, 1 will be replaced with 3. What does this mean? Is that all the alphabets that are present in the column 1 in the plain text will be shifted to column 3 in the ciphertext. All the alphabets in column 2 will be shifted to column 6. So, RSS will be shifted to column 6, RSS. At the time of decryption, we use the same rule, but from the other side. That is, the alphabets in 8th column will be shifted to 6th column. So, 8th has DDU, will be shifted to 6th being DDU. 7 and 8. So, 7 is having E, which will go to 8th one. So, this is how transposition cipher works. The next is rail fence cipher. In rail fence cipher, the plain text is written downwards on successive rails of imaginary fence. Then moving up, when we get to the bottom, message is then read off in rows. Confused, right? Wait, let me explain you again. So this is the plain text that we want to encrypt, which is success is how high you bounce when you hit bottom. So what we do is that we select a key. As in this, we have selected key 4. So we will form 4 rows. And now in this rows, we have to arrange the alphabets of the plain text in diagonal way. Like U will be diagonal to S, C will be diagonal to U. And once we reach bottom, then we have to again come diagonally upwards. So in this way, our plain text is arranged. Now, what we do is that we read it row wise, like S, S, H, U. So ciphertext will have S, S, H, U. Then E, O, O, after which U comes according to the next row. So, as you can see, so it is U, E, O, O, U. This is how the rail fence cipher works. The next is stream cipher, which is a symmetric key cipher where each plain text symbol is encrypted one at a time with corresponding key string to give a symbol of ciphertext string. It operates on a byte at a time basis using two data streams. So, as you can see in this like demonstration, that first 0 will be taken, it will be encrypted, then 1 will be taken, it will be processed and encrypted, then 0 will be taken. Like it is taking a bit by bit, and this method is common in the embedded devices. The next is block cipher, which always encrypts a full block, that is several bits. So in this case, 0100 will be taken at a time and encrypted. Then 0110 will be taken and encrypted. Then 0110 will be taken and encrypted. This method is common in internet applications. Let's use a simple analogy to better understand the difference between the two. So imagine you're encrypting a book. You could encrypt the content one page at a time, which is analogous to block cipher, on one letter at a time, which is analogous to stream cipher. To understand the logic of stream and block cipher, let's revise the concept of XOR operation, which says that if it is manipulating on the two bits which are same, then it will produce the output of 0. And if it operates on two different bits, then the output produced will be 1. So 0 XOR 0 will produce 0. 1 XOR 1 will produce 0. 1 XOR 0, the different bits will produce 1. And 0 XOR 1 will produce 1. So what we do is that we take the plain text and then we choose a secret key. So I have chosen 111 and now we encrypt bit by bit. So 0 and 1. So 0 XOR 1 will give 1. 0 XOR 1 will give 1. 1 XOR 1 will give 0. Now we get the ciphertext. At the time of decryption, we use the same key as that was used while encryption and again perform the XOR operation. So 1 XOR 1 will give 0. 1 XOR 1 will give 0. 0 XOR 1 will give 1. So this is the plain text that we had used. So we get back it using the decryption. I have demonstrated this using an example. So I have used XOR encryptor where I have typed the message hello everyone and encrypted it using the password 1101. After encrypting it, I get this number. When I use XOR decryptor and put the same number and the same password, so I get back the original string, which was hello everyone. So now let's see how to exchange information without knowing the private key, which is known as Diffie-Hellman key exchange. So how does it work? So both Alice and Bob will take the common paint and then encrypt the messages using their own secret colors. After that, whatever will be the output that they get after encrypting with the secret colors, that is passed over the public network. After which, Alice will use its own secret key to decrypt the message, as well as Bob will use his own secret key to decrypt the message, and both are able to have the same secret message received. I have used this method to show it. So user 1 and user 2. User 1 is having a private key small a and public key of capital A, whereas the user 2 is having public key of small b, a private key of small b and public key of capital B. So now what happens is that this operation is performed by user 1, which is basically like 5 raised to a mod 5600007. So after performing this, as A is with user 1, which is its private key, a capital A which is produced, which is a public key and then given to user 2. User 2 has at his end, he will perform the same operation using his private key and get capital B. So capital B is again the public key, so it is transferred to user 1. Now user 1 has access to capital B, that was the public key, and small a, which was its own private key. So this operation being performed, we get Y. Similarly, for user 2, he has the access of the public key of user 1 and private key of himself, and on performing this operation, we get X. And we observe that X equals to Y. I've taken the screenshots of the same. So user 1, if he uses the private key 7, so A will be replaced by 7. On performing this operation, we get 78125, which is the public key, which is given to user 2. Similarly, user 2 is going to use its own public key 11 and get this operation's value, which is 35376, which is the public value being sent to the user 1. Now user 1 has access to capital B and small a, so this action is performed and we get 65971. Similarly, user 2 has access to his own private key, which is 11, and public key, which is capital A, and this again action is performed. And yes, you can observe that this is the same thing which both users have finally. The next is RSA. RSA is a public key crypto system that is widely used for secure data transmission. It is also one of the oldest. For all the ciphers in use before RSS, the methods of encryption and decryption were known to both the sender and the receiver of the message. With RSA, the instructions for how to encrypt a message can be made public without compromising the security of the method of decryption. So, now what happens in this is that the sender uses its public key to encrypt the message and then it is sent over the communication channel. At the end of the receiver, he uses his own private key to decrypt the message. To understand this algorithm better, let's revise the concept of modulo operation. As we know, we can write 23 as 2 into 11 plus 1, where 1 is the remainder, 11 is the divisor, and 2 is the quotient, which in terms of modulus can be written as 23 equals to 1 mod 11, divisor, remainder, and the number. So it is read off as 23 is congruent to 1 modulo 11. And whenever we divide a number by any number, the remainder always we get between 0 to n minus 1. So on dividing by 11, we get the remainder in the range 0 to n minus 1, which is 10. So now how RSA works. The step 1 is that we choose two prime numbers, p and q. Example, here we choose p to be 5 and q to be 13. Then we calculate n as p into q. Example, here n becomes 5 into 13, which is 65. Now there is one more alphabet a, which is p minus 1 and q minus 1. So our a becomes 4 into 12, which is 48. Now we have to choose an integer e such that e lies between 1 and a, such that e and a are relatively prime. That means they have only 1 as the cofactor. So we choose e as 11, as 11 and 48 don't have any common factor except 1. After this, we have to choose d to be a multiplicative inverse of e modulo a. That means we have to find a unique integer d in the range 1 to a such that d into e minus 1 is a multiple of e. Let us consider d to be 35. So this equation becomes 35 into 11, e being 11 minus 1, which is 384, which is 8 into 48. So it's a multiple of a. So we are safe to assume our d as 35. Now to encrypt a number, we first encrypt it, we raise it to the power of 11 and then find its remainder when we divide with n, which is 65. So to encrypt 3, we first raise it to the power 11. So it becomes 177147. Now using normal mathematics, we can write 177147 equals to 2725 into 65 plus 20. 22 is the remainder, 65 is the divisor, and 2725 is the quotient. So the remainder here is 22. So 3 encrypts as 22, and this is written in this way. Now to decrypt at the end of the receiver, what we do is that we extract this 22 and raise it to the power of d, and then find the remainder when we divide it by 65. So we can write it as 22 raised to 35 equals to 3 mod 65, and we had to find the remainder only. So 3 will be the remainder, and now we have received at the end of the receiver the secret message, which was 3. Now let's discuss on the keys. To public key encryption, so at the time of passing, so n comma e is the pair that is passed over the network, and the encryption algorithm used is c equals to m raised to e mod n, where c is between 0 to n minus 1. So private key decryption. So decryption is done using the formula m equals to c raised to d mod n, where primes p and q must be kept secret, since anyone who knows p and q and e can compute d. The secrecy of d lies on the fact that it's very difficult to factorize large numbers. We need to choose primes P and Q large enough so that even though the product n is public, it is not computationally feasible to factorize n and discover P and Q. There are infinitely many prime numbers. Using a computer, it's relatively easy to find lots of large prime numbers. At present, however, it is difficult to find the prime factorization of a very large number. This is what makes RSA encryption so hard to crack. The next method is steganography. Steganography is a technique of hiding secret data within an ordinary, non secret file or message in order to avoid detection. The secret data is then extracted at its destination. We can hide the text message in text, video, image, or sound file. Let's have a quick demo of it. So here I have taken the demo yesterday on Kali Linux. So this is my image in which I have to encrypt the message. After that, I create a secret message. So this is the message that I want to encrypt in the image. I have to make one thing sure is that both the image and the secret text should lie in one folder. So I've created a folder secret on the desktop. Now I will navigate to that folder using the commands cd desktop and then cd secret. Now after that, to make the steganography possible, we should install StegHide software in our Linux. So we use the command for it as sudo apt install StegHide. As I already installed it, nothing new has been upgraded or installed. Now to add the message in the image, we type the command steghide embedded -cf image.jpg -ef and then the secret.txt. So this is the image in which I have to encrypt and this is the name of the file from which I have to add it to the image. Now I enter the passphrase. This is like a password which we need at the time of decrypting to ensure that we are only the one who had encrypted. So this is the image with the secret text. It looks completely alike to the one without the text in it. Now to extract it, we have to extract the secret message from the image. We use this command which is steghide extract -sf and then the image name. Now we enter the passphrase again that we had entered before, and after that a new file is created which is named as secret.txt and it has this message: "Hi, I'm Nimisha and this is my secret message." So as again seen in this image, the hidden message is added in the carrier file, and this is the carrier file with the hidden message, which almost looks almost like it's same only, and it's difficult to identify that this image is having some hidden text. Now let's see some recent incidents which happened due to encryption. So over 7 lakh Rail Yatri's users' data has been reportedly leaked via an unsecure server due to inadequate security measures. The details of the database included full names, phone numbers, addresses, email IDs, ticket booking details, UPI IDs, GPS location, and partial info on the debit and credit card numbers. The affected server was exposed because it had no encryption or password for several days. The data was exposed to an extent that anyone with the IP address could have the access to 43 GB of data. So now we have reached a stage in which if Sam has to pass on the message to Bob, what he can do, so what he does is that he takes the message, he encrypts it with the key, and the encrypted message is passed to Bob. But at the end of the Bob, when he decrypts it using his private key, this shows him an error. So why is this error? It is because Eve had somehow managed to alter the message and changed it. So at least now Bob knows that this message is not the real one and it's changed. So now our hero, that is our Bob, Bob and Sam are safe from the hackers. But wait, don't be so excited. A cryptographic system should be secure even if everything about the system except the key is of public knowledge. One of the most dangerous security mistakes a programmer can make is trusting that the things that are secret during development can stay secret forever. Imagine you write an algorithm to verify proportional codes. As soon as someone discovers its rule of logic by research, reverse engineering, trial and error, or just asking questions, it ceases to be a reliable test for finding truth.
Analysis.
No secret lasts forever, and every secret is just one exploit away from being compromised. This concept can seem confusing at once because computer security does rely on secret ingredients like passwords and keys. But if you look more carefully, you find that these are the exact weak points of the system to be minimized, managed, or avoided wherever possible. Passwords are notorious failure points. All it takes is just one email spoofing attack or improperly discarded hard disk drive to pinch one. So this takes us to the next topic, which is cryptanalysis, study of principles or methods of deciphering ciphertext without knowing the key. Before saying the types of cryptanalysis, let's see how cryptanalysts work in real world with a clip from movie The Imitation Game, which was released in 2014, which is based on the life of Alan Turing. During the World War II, Alan Turing was appointed to decrypt the messages sent by Germans, which were encrypted using Enigma machine. He had named this machine as Christopher, which he constructed, but it could not determine the Enigma encryption settings quickly enough. They had only 24 hours to decrypt the message, otherwise, they had to start decrypting all over the other again the next day. After overhearing a conversation with a female clerk about the message she received from Alice, Turing had an efficiency, realizing that he can program the machine to decode words he already knows exist in certain message. After he recalibrates the machine, it quickly decodes a message and the cryptographers celebrate. Turing played a crucial role in cracking intercepted coded messages that enabled the Allies to defeat the Nazis in many crucial engagements, including the Battle of Atlantic. It has been estimated that his work shortened the war in Europe by more than 2 years and saved over 14 million lives. So, cryptographic systems are generally classified along three independent dimensions: the type of operations used for transforming plain text to ciphertext. The two general principles are substitution, transposition. The number of keys used, referred to as symmetric or asymmetric. The way in which the plain text is processed. The strategy used by the cryptanalyst depends on the nature of the encryption scheme and the information available to the cryptanalyst. So, based on the things that are known to the cryptanalyst, the type of attack is divided into five major forms: ciphertext only, known plain text, chosen ciphertext, and chosen text. Now, we see that if the cryptanalyst only knows the ciphertext, then he uses the brute force approach to try all possible keys. So here we know the cryptanalyst knows only the C1, which is the cipher one, which is encrypted using key K on the plain text P1. Similarly, C2 equals to K2 P2. Now the task here is to find the plain text of this message, or even better, the key. So brute force is used in this approach. The next, if the cryptanalyst knows the plain text, the analyst may be able to capture one or more plain text messages as well as their encryptions, or he may know the certain plain text patterns will appear in a message. He may also deduce the key. So in this case, the cryptanalyst knows the P1 and C1, which is in turn equals to EK P1. So the task here is to find K key or the algorithm to infer Pi plus 1 for C from Ci plus 1. The next is if the cryptanalyst knows the chosen plain text. So if the analyst is able to choose the messages to encrypt, the analyst may deliberately pick patterns that can be expected to reveal the structure of the key. So here, plain text and ciphertext pairs are given, and plain text is chosen that gets encrypted. So your P1, P2, and Pi can be chosen, and C1 is also known. So the task again remains same, which is to find K key or algorithm to infer Pi plus 1 from Ci plus 1. The next is chosen ciphertext attack. So here we can choose different ciphertext to be decrypted. Access to decrypted plain text like this. We have C1 and P1, which is equal to DK, that is decrypted encrypt ciphertext. Decrypted ciphertext. So task is again to find the KK, and it has applicable in public key cryptography. The next method is adaptive chosen plain text attack, in which plain text and ciphertext pairs are known. We can choose the plain text that gets encrypted, and we can modify the plain text choices depending on the results of the previous encryption. So here P1 and C1 are known, and P1, P2, Pi can be chosen. So the task is again to find the key K or to the algorithm to infer Pi plus 1 from Ki plus 1. The last method is the brute force attack, which involves trying every possible key until an intelligible translation of the ciphertext into plain text is obtained. On an average, half of all possible keys must be tried to achieve success. To supplement the brute force approach, some degree of knowledge about expected plain text is needed. Some means of automatically distinguishing plain text from garble is also needed. Let's check this out once. So, I have chosen some random text and then we'll do a small analysis of this text. So, as we see, A occurs 6.9 times in it, E occurs 12.5 times in it, Z occurs 0.0%. That means in any given paragraph or sentence, occurrence of different alphabets is different. So, what we usually observe is that E and T occur the most number of times, 9.4 and 12.5, whereas Z and other letters like X occur the minimum number of times. This is very useful while trying to decrypt the text. So let's see, this is a sample encoded piece of text that we have. Now we do the frequency analysis of this text, the ciphertext only. So we observe that in this ciphertext, A occurs 1.9 times, Y occurs 12.5 times, Z occurs 0.0 times. They have also given us a graph. So here the blue one is the normal text and the black one is the ciphertext. As we can see in the normal text, E occurs the maximum number of times, whereas in the encrypted message, Y occurs the maximum number of times. This makes us assume and come to the conclusion that that Y is E is encrypted as Y in the ciphertext. Next, maximum occurrence is of M. So we can assume that M corresponds to T. So this is what is written here. Y corresponds to E and M corresponds to T. After this, there are also 2-letter words that occur most. So these are the list, and 3 letters most occurring ones. Here is the list. So as per our probability that we found, so Y should be replaced with E. So let's replace Y with E. And next we had found that we replace M with T. So here is M, we replace it with T. So let's try it. So now your different set of data is there. So yours J occurs the maximum number of time. So J will become E, and the next is V, which will correspond to T. So J we will replace with E, and V will replace with T. Let's try this. So some of the things are encrypted in this. The next which we can assume is T is replaced with O. T is replaced with O, and E is replaced with A. So let's try it. So now some more encryptions are done. So as you can see here, TQE. So this is most probably close to H. So what we do is that Q will be replaced with H. So now we can see somewhere we will find encrypted those. So in this way, we do, and cryptanalysts do the encryption. So thank you.
Thank you, Nimisha, for the wonderful session. You took up topics which are not very easy to understand, You talked about cryptography, you talked about steganography, you talked about symmetric, asymmetric encryption, as well as you talked about RSA, and a lot of different things. You talked about block cipher, stream ciphers. So I think, according to me, this was the best session you could present on cryptography. Guys, if you have any doubt, we have a bit of time constraint. So whatever questions you have, we can maybe connect directly to Nimisha once again with all the questions we have the next time, or if it is a short or a quick question, you can ask it right away. Thank you, Nimisha. This was a wonderful presentation, I would say. Your
Thank
hard
you.
work can be seen from the presentation, and I really appreciate what all efforts you have put to make this a successful event. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the opportunity.